it was culture, the local culture, that actually triumphed over the US's money, the US's politics, technology, and military. What's happening in Afghanistan right now is one of the best demonstration, one of the best proof of how powerful culture is. It was culture, the local culture, that actually triumphed over the US's money, the US's politics, technology, and military. This is supposed to be a light, happy, positive channel, and I want to keep it that way because there's so many horrible things that are happening out there. I don't want to end to it. I just want people to be able to, I don't want to contribute to that. I want people to come to my channel and just forget all about that. So I'm gonna take a different perspective on what's happening in Afghanistan, and this is not me trying to downplay or look down on the struggles that people are going through there. This is just a different point of view. I think one of the reasons, the strongest reason that the US failed to liberate, by US's definition, Afghanistan, is the lack of understanding, respect, and appreciation for Afghanistan culture. When the US sent troops there in 2001, the US tried to mimic the government of the US, highly centralized, that there was no a representation of the ethnicities and the tribes of Afghanistan, and so this tribes, they felt isolated instead of being a part of the change and the part of this move towards liberation. They actually favored Western leaders. Ashraf Ghani, he was Western educated. Instead of getting leaders from this different ethnic groups and different tribes, they favored those that came from the US. And so, of course, if you feel oppressed, if you don't feel recognized, your tendency is to rebuild your confidence, rebuild your own identity away from the people that are not recognizing you. And that's what happened. All of these tribes, all of these ethnic groups that felt they were not being represented, they rebuild themselves away from the US. And so instead of strengthening what the US is doing, instead of the US tapping local strength and local culture to strengthen their own agenda, they weakened it and forced all of these people to develop their own power away from them. It was and it's very puzzling because it's just in history, it's already been proven that if you impose your own culture and your own way of life and your own belief in another country or another culture, it's not going to work. It's just because it's different. That's what the US did. There was absolutely no regard to the tribes. There was no regard and respect and recognition of the many conflicts that were happening already in Afghanistan, and because of the difference in tribes and differences in culture. And there was low literacy, and the US was forcing all of this. In the military itself, they were training the military in high-tech weapons in a low-tech country. And there was so much dependence in US supply, US expertise, instead of allowing Afghanistan military to build their own strength given the limitations that they had. So yeah, and there's I think the first name, I can't remember right now, but his last name is Brahimi, and he was actually, he led the UN group that sort of rebuilt the policies, or yeah, they were trying to rebuild the policies in Afghanistan. And what he said was that he told everybody that you need to tread lightly, you need to be very careful, because this is a different culture, this is a different country. But that's not what happened. What happened was that there was no, the aspirations of the Afghans, they were not honored. What happened was that the US couldn't understand that just because that is not how we do things. That just because we think something is wrong doesn't mean that the Afghans think that's wrong. It's a different culture, they have different beliefs, and just because it's not consistent with ours, it doesn't make them wrong. And the other thing is that the US didn't work with Pakistan, and what happened was that many of those that were booted out by the government, they went to Pakistan, and that's where they rebuilt their own military and their own politics. And the Pakistan military dictator Musharraf, I think he admitted eventually that although he was helping the US, he was also helping Al Qaeda, because he knew that the US wasn't going to stay long in Afghanistan. But going back to that, again, it boiled down to that. Everyone saw it. Everyone saw it. Pakistan saw it. The world saw it. The Afghans saw it. That it's not gonna work. What the US was insisting on them was not gonna work, because they are not Americans. They're Afghans, and they are not being recognized for that. Their faith was not being honored. Their belief was not being honored, and their culture was not being honored. And when your identity is not honored, all of that built the identity of Afghans. And when that's not being honored, you're not helping your case. The tendencies for all of these people who are not being recognized and honored to rebuild their own identity and their own culture and their own politics and their own military in the way that they know how, and that means away from the agenda or that thing that the US was doing. And so I hope that we could take that lesson from what happened in Afghanistan in our everyday lives. It's just, in Asia itself, it's such a varied continent. There's so many thousands of languages, thousands of culture, thousands of beliefs and religions and people. And just because we do things that aren't necessarily consistent with what you believe in or what you are used to, it doesn't make us wrong. And you just need to recognize and understand and respect that, the same way we owe it to you. That just because you do things one way and we don't do it that way doesn't mean we should honor that and we should respect that. And when we're here in the US, then we follow the rules that you live by. But we shouldn't be isolating each other, and we shouldn't be judging each other. Yeah, it's just a little too heavy from my usual topic, but as I've said, when I saw that picture of that kid, of that infant being lifted to the US soldiers to escape the chaos, who apparently that child was reunited with his father, who was in the infirmary or something. But it was very heartbreaking for me. But that's one of the many of the thousands of takeaways and thousands of lessons that I think that I personally reflected on, and I hope I shared something significant to everybody else. Yeah, I don't know right now.